Any comments on agenda items? No comments on agenda items. Okay. Okay. Item 4, we have some recognition. A couple of school board members have had a long term of service. Lloyd Bennett, 12 years of service, and William Whitener, 16 years of service.
Great. So
And
yes.
that's a certificate.
Yeah. Right.
Still not. Thank you.
Probably about every 4 years or so. Anyway, we thank you for your service, the two of you. Very much appreciated. And we have guests tonight.
We do have guests tonight.
Mr. Neely.
So Mr. Neely is here with the Tunkhannock representation for the Governor's STEM Challenge. These students went to Kingston. It was at the IU, right?
Yeah,
okay,
IU
so
18.
IU 18, and they competed regionally with other schools in our area, and they brought home the first place. And so what they're going to do then is they will now compete in Harrisburg. So we wanted to show everybody the innovative idea that they came up with. Mr. Ellsworth feels pretty confident about our chances in Harrisburg. So we're really excited about this, and it gave these students a chance to work with not only Procter & Gamble, but also with Milnes Engineering. So I will turn it over to you and have them show us what they did.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. The whole idea of the Governor's STEM competition is to have high school students partner with local businesses or some kind of entity to make Pennsylvania, use science and engineering practices to make Pennsylvania a better place. And so this year, as Ms. McPherson said, we're lucky enough to be able to partner with two amazing businesses, Procter & Gamble and Milnes Engineering, to achieve something really quite spectacular. And this is about as real as it gets. I mean, we were tasked by Procter & Gamble to assist them in this endeavor, and they were able to coordinate with multiple businesses to get people in the same place and gather this data, compile it, and Procter & Gamble is already utilizing some of the information that the students were able to render, and they have eyes on the future also. So this is
Nice way to pull that in. Thank you.
Good job, Mr.
He's a marketing guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did she give you $20?
Hi, I'm Ronnie Shrivastava.
I'm David Berry.
My name's Paul Bitter.
I'm Thomas Elias.
I'm Randy Percival.
And our project was Thermodrone 3D. Thermodrone is a process by which we provide a client with all the intel necessary to decrease their carbon footprint and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by using drones and thermal scanning technology.
We got into contact with P&G, and they tasked us with finding areas of heat loss in their ductwork. The ductwork connects an engine to their paper machines, and it reclaims heat that is lost from the engine and reuses it to aid in the process of drying paper. They realized that there were areas that were losing heat, and in order to make them more efficient, they wanted us to aid in finding those areas. So with using Thermodrone 3D, we realized that we could use both regular and thermal images to create 3D models, and using the thermal images to find those exact areas where we were losing heat.
This is some of the piping we were looking at with our drone flights, and the steam going over the pipe is one of the places we looked at where it could be corroding and losing heat.
So with our scans in the left, you can see through a software called Pix4D,
allows you to create a flight path as well as take pictures that are taken in certain aspects that are actually geographically coordinates. So on the image on the left, there's a series of green lines and red dots. Each red dot is a picture that the drone took. The image in the top right is what we get when we put the pictures into the software, which is actually called a point cloud. And in the point cloud, it overlays the images, and with that, in the bottom right, we are left with a three-dimensional model of the entire ductwork. So our thermal scale that we use is the image on the top, and the photos on the bottom is a simultaneous photo taken by the drone. The one on the left is a normal everyday image from the camera, but on the bottom right, you can see that it's a thermal scan of our surrounding areas. And in the left side of the photo, you could actually see the tail end of the cogen unit, and you could see that it's putting off a lot of heat in relation to us, which is 100 degrees.
These are some of the thermal scans we took with the drone, and you can see around the joints where that heat is leaking out around it. We made a 3D rendering that we gave to PNG, and they are using that along with the images we took with the drone to fix their leaking joints.
We then wanted to calculate the amount of power lost by these thermal signatures, and got a total of 13.84 BTUs per second of power being released. We then converted this number into pounds of carbon dioxide per year being released into the environment, and got about 51,000. This would be equivalent to 1,064 trees consumption of this carbon dioxide. These thermal signatures losses are also equivalent to the yearly carbon dioxide emissions of 5 cars.
And looking forward with Thermodrone 3D, we thought to not only reclaim heat and reduce our carbon footprint in industrial settings, but also to move to residential settings. The scale that we used on our drone scan, as you can see on page 6 of the binders, it's scaled up because these temperatures reached about 752. That was the highest temperature that we recorded. We scaled that back through scanning of homes and businesses. And looking forward, with PNG, we were actually able to help them with their 2030 plan, which was to support the green initiatives, reaching 100% renewable electricity, and to cut their greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. We were lucky enough to help them with this pursuit.
Thank you for your time.
So I want to thank the kids, young adults, I should say. Mr. Neely, thank you so much. I know you took a deep dive with these guys, and I really appreciate your leadership and your guidance, and Mr. Ellsworth as well. And to all of you parents. And I just want to say, I don't know how much, I mean, I'm going to ask you guys. So what was motivating about this project?
Come on, Randy.
Well, it's really helping the environment, these improvements, so that's a big motivation factor.
Yes, because they feel like they're contributing, they feel like they're making a difference, they feel like this is real world, and they feel like this is their future. That's what we need to make school. That's exactly what we need to make school. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Hey, and good luck in Harrisburg.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
May 7th and 8th.
Okay.
So we have a little bit of breathing time.
Yeah, just to make even better improvements.
Yeah, our next step, as you know, the team alluded to there, we're going to partner with Build again and do some more scans
Cool.
of residential areas and see just how much fewer greenhouse gases we can burn by making our homes more efficient also.
Nice.
So it's when they did those calculations and everything, and you get some of those tangible numbers, it's like,
It's big. world. All right, okay.
Push the boulder, right? Little bit at a time.
Yeah, a little bit at a time, that's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like the minutes to reflect that we had an executive session prior to the meeting tonight for some personnel issues. Okay, on item 5, business and finance, we have a motion for items 1 through 6.
Motion.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes, but I have to abstain from 5A.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
No.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Okay, item 6, superintendent's report.
I'm asking for a motion to approve items 1 through 6 in the superintendent's report.
Motion. Second.
Discussion. Roll call?
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes, but I would like to make a comment. Megan Turpak, the medical assistant, she's in the IC. She's been an amazing employee on top of every kid that has an illness or needs medication. I'm really sad to see her leave.
Yeah, that's, okay. Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Do you have anything else?
No, nothing else.
Committee reports, Building and Grounds Committee met.
We met since that last board meeting.
Last
I
week?
think we met
I
since
don't
the
think so.
last
No?
board meeting, so we met right prior to the last board meeting, which is when we gave the update regarding, regarding.
We haven't met.
Okay.
This is part of my report, so just do it if you want. Okay.
All right, on to new unfinished business. We have 6 policies. I had a first reading last meeting. This is the second reading. We have a resolution to approve, motion to approve.
Motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Holly? Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
No.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Under new business, the Visa account is there for your information. In item 2, a resolution to approve bus and van contracts. Do you have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Abstain.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 3, looking for approval of memorandum of understanding with Energy Systems Group, LLC.
Motion. Second.
Discussion?
So what I'll just share briefly with this is a group that we have met with that we would like to have come in and do a district-wide assessment of energy and facility maintenance opportunities. They come in at no cost to the district, do an initial assessment, they'll share those results with myself and John, and then we can make a determination if any of those projects we feel are warranted as cost savings improvements long-term for the district.
Okay. Roll call?
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 4, looking for motion to approve overnight field trips.
Motion. Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to skip to the supplemental agenda. Item 1, to approve a settlement agreement and release We have a motion?
Second.
Okay. No discussion. Roll call?
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
No.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Revola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Fark?
Yes. Okay, item 5. Bond proposal.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Ottenstein with Financial Solutions. I know I met some of you last week in about 2016 when we did the bonds with Gary Polsini. Gary's staying out in Pittsburgh, and I'm coming up tonight. With me is Brian Kozlansky from Stevens and Lee as bond counsel for the district. We had a number of handouts that we put out on the table for you to take a look at. The first one that I'll be going through is your current debt portfolio. We are aware that the district is looking at the possibility of undertaking some capital projects, so we put together what your current debt portfolio is, and then also what the future debt portfolio would look like under some different scenarios that you can consider various options for the district. On that first page, you can see right now the district has 2 pieces of debt outstanding. The first one is the 2015 bonds, and the second one is the 2016 bonds. The great thing about the district's current debt portfolio is it is very small, and it is fully matured by 2027. So right now, the district has a very minimal debt load compared to most districts in the state of Pennsylvania. And really, when you look at your debt portfolio, you paid $3.5 million a year this year. It drops down to 3.4 in 21, 3.4 again in 22, and then 1.4, and then is really nothing from there on out in 2024 forward. So the capacity for your debt without impacting future expenses is really very good for the district right now. So the second page there is just a pictorial representation of the same thing for those who sometimes have a better ability to understand by seeing it in pictures. The third page is just a review of 4 different options. 2 of the options are based on borrowing $4 million. The other 2 are based on borrowing $5 million. Both of those options of 4 and 5 were run at 15-year terms and a 20-year term. Under both scenarios, or under all 4 scenarios, what we're considering is a fixed rate bond issue that would be sold in the public market. This would be sold at the time of pricing. Those rates would be locked in. They'd be fixed for the entire term. There would be no market rate risk for the district once it decided to enter into those bonds. When it's priced, those rates are locked in. You can see here at the very bottom under column A with the $5 million maturity with the $5 million with a 15-year maturity, we're looking at an all-in rate of about 2.48% based on current market rates. The market right now is fantastic for borrowers. It's not great for investors, but for borrowers, the rates are incredibly low. And even since we've done this, the rates have continued to drop, improving for the district. If you go to a 20-year maturity, obviously you're extending that length. The interest rate would then, the blended interest rate would go up. We're looking at about 2.6. And then with 4 million, 2.5 is an average, and 2.7 moving on. In all those cases, most of your cost of issuance are fixed, other than some, the very small ones, of underwriting discount and bond insurance that is variable based on the size. On the page 4 that follows is just a breakout of what we would anticipate that debt to look like and what that impact would be to you. So, column A is your current debt service, and I'm sorry for the small print, but in order to get it on one page, we kind of had to shrink it down a little bit. Column B shows you what $5 million based on a 15-year maturity would look like. And column C is the difference between your current debt service and the new debt service, which equals the debt service on the new bonds. So you can see if you were to look at $5 million over 15 years, you'd be looking at about $450,000 a year for the cost of that. Column D then shows you $5 million at 20 years, and instead of $450,000, then you're looking at about $350,000 a year from 2023 to 2040. Column F then looks at the $4 million issue. That would cost you at 15 years, that would cost you at about $366,000 a year. And then column H is the $4 million at 20 years, which is about $285,000 a year through maturity. Again, all of those would be fixed. It could change in between, obviously it will change in between now and when you make a decision. But once you do make that decision and you decide to move forward, once they are priced, that rate is fixed. It will not change on you. We would be looking at a 5-year call, which means that at any time after those 5 years, if rates were favorable, you could refund those without penalty. So that there's no issue for you there on that. We'd have a 5-year call on this. And these would be tax exempt bonds. So with that, that's a quick overview of those various alternatives for you and what that would look like through the district. With me, I mentioned is Brian Kozlansky. He handled out some other documents, including the resolution and also the ad, some of the requirements that we would need to move forward if the district so chooses.
And what we want to do, since we were coming up tonight and we're not taking any action on this, but I wanted to bring up what the resolution would look like. It looks very similar to the debt resolutions that the district has adopted before for borrowings. It's all the things that the Debt Act requires us to do and requires the district to do to go from saying we're going to issue bonds to get to closing, execution of documents, filings with the state. So it's very long, but it has to cover all those items and does everything that Brian just went over. Once we decide how much we're borrowing, how long we want to issue that debt for. The other one, the shorter piece, is the first ad that we have to put in the paper before we adopt the resolution. Brian's going to go through the schedule in a little bit, but what we were originally talking about was a resolution to approve, or a meeting to approve the resolution at March 12th, and then Brian will go through the rest of the calendar. That's about as quickly as we could move on this to get you to a closing on these projects. What we don't have yet, and what we would need the decision to be the next couple days to get to the 12th is it $4 million or $5 million or a different number, and then whether it's a 15 or 20-year maturity so that we can run the maximum par amounts to fill in this resolution. We can be anywhere under that amount by the time we get to closing, and there's still some time after it's adopted because we have a 30-day filing with the state. So even if you weren't sure and you error, you wanted to say, let's put in a large number now and we can still think about it, we can be under that. We just can't put $4 million in and then go up to, and then want to go to 5. We'd have to redo the whole process. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, this is set up as a parameters resolution, so it's a not to exceed amount. We'd be passing this before the bonds were priced. So even if you said you wanted to issue $5 million for project costs, and there's a little bit extra for the cost of issuance, but if you wanted to have $5 million to spend, what you'd see in this resolution is probably a $8 or $9 million number. And the reason why we do that is when the state approves your debt, since we haven't priced bonds yet, we want to give some flexibility each year that when the bonds are priced, they can move maturities around to get you the best interest rate. And what we don't want to do is miss on any of those years, because then once again, you'd have to do it all over again and have the ads to do and the filing with the state. So that's not what you'd be borrowing, but that's the way we'd set it up. You'd only issue whether it's the $4 or $5 million that you wanted. And then once we have that final number, we just let the state know and they take it off. So there's a lot of fudge in there just in that dollar amount. I just didn't want anybody to be concerned that if you see the ad in the paper for $8 million, that you're borrowing 8, you're not. But we just have to do it that way.
One thing I wanted to just add as we're having this discussion. So when we talked a couple weeks ago at the board meeting about the roofing project, so the predominant need for this is to be able to fund the roofing project. I shared that the total cost of the roofing project across the district is approximately $3 million. So I'm guessing that there may be some question as to why we're discussing a $4 million and a $5 million number as a part of this conversation. One of the things that we have been advised is we really don't want to have to go do this again in the near future. And because the rates are at an excellent level, it would behoove us to understand the full breadth of the asset restoration needs across the district and plan for that accordingly at this time. So while the roofing project is certainly the bulk of the need right now in the district, there are a number of additional projects that we would really not have any other way to fund in the next, call it 5 to 10 years, through regular budget management. So just setting aside a chunk of money is not necessarily going to allow us to potentially replace boilers that are 20 years old, in the admin building, well, the admin building, they're older than that, but in the IC, in the intermediate center, they've already reached a 20-year life, and we need to start making plans for that. If at some point in the near future, we want to consider natural gas conversion, there are equipment needs to go along with that. And while we are still looking for other ways to be able to fund that, we need to make sure that we are taking really a 5 to 10 year approach when we think about this funding. So, that is why that number is different from the number we spoke about 2 weeks ago. And, I think it's also important to understand that it's not realistic for us to go spend the entire fund balance in one shot to go fund a project such as roof replacements across the district. At this time, the way that the fund balance is structured and where we're at this point in the journey, on a yearly basis, until these other two bonds, our full commitment is met, we have to watch for cash flow issues on an annual basis. And you can't go get a bond to be able to pay for salaries and monthly general operating expenses. You can, however, use a bond to go fund capital purchases, capital investments on behalf of the district. And so I know there are a lot of questions out there as to why we would need to go look at a bond option. But as we have discussed with all the appropriate financial resources, this is what is recommended for the district at this point in time. I don't know if any of the other board members, want to ask questions or share additional perspective as you think about why we're considering it at this point in time for the district.
So the only thing to add to you, in addition to the rates being, the 10-year bond hit the all-time low this morning. And so timing is right, but we also have fixed expenses that are part of a bond issuance, so we don't want to take a $3 million bond and come back and need to spend another $90,000 to go out and get a $1 million bond. Makes no sense. So we need to assess what those are, and that's what we've asked Shane to do with the resources of the district. Say, what does that list of projects look like, and then we can finalize how much do we want that to be, and we'll secure that funding.
And to put a little bit more color on that, under the tax rules that we have, and we've talked about this, we can borrow what we expect to spend over the next 3-year period. So that's why we have some flexibility. We don't have to identify all those projects now, but we have to have the expectation that the amount of money that we're borrowing, whether it's $3, $4, or $5 million, that we can spend on capital projects over that 3-year period.
Yes.
And that's some of the things we've been talking to the administration about, of identifying, not that they can't move around as needs come up, but that we have to say and be comfortable that that is an amount of money that we can spend over a 3-year period.
But you can't move this around in non-capital expenditures.
That's correct.
Both the Local Government and Debt Act in Pennsylvania, the state law, and federal tax law does not allow, except for it's very difficult to borrow on a tax-exempt basis for working capital items. There's a couple ways of doing it. It's not an easy option, nor is it a preferred option under state law.
So is that fund balance, Bob, I'm not sure that, so, we started out several years ago with a $9 million fund balance, and we're somewhere in like a $3.5 million range today. And so, as we think about a capital project, we're not gonna dedicate that $3.5 million, because as you just asked, we can't switch that later and use a bond for working capital expenditures.
That $3.5 million can be used for salaries and the fuel bill. But if we've got a larger project that we need to do, a few years ago we had to do the track, that was over $200,000. A project like that would come under the bond issuance criteria.
So at this stage of the game, if you were to go into a bond issue, either $4 or $5 million, you've already voted that you're not going to raise the tax limit above a certain level. Can you, now that you're doing this at this time in, course of the calendar year, can you go back and change what you voted on previous? You're still
bound by it.
You're still bound by it.
I don't know of any mechanism
And
to
there's
change
no,
it.
I can speak for there's no energy to go above any index, that's for sure.
No.
So the only vote that took place previously is not to exceed index.
Right.
And we have not yet made a determination or had a preliminary discussion about what the recommendations are going forward. I think obviously this is a piece of that conversation, and understanding how this plays in with the total budget projections for 2021.
A major piece was the taxpayers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And Ryan can speak to this too, but the new issue is structured to
first
come
2 years.
in after those high payments. So it is structured to take into account the least amount of impact on millage and debt service over the next couple of years.
So to that last question, I think that if anything, this bond issuance takes some of the near-term pressure off on funding things like a roof, which would require additional tax increases, Bob. I think that's where you're going with that. This was forward thinking and trying to do this in a longer maturity, so we don't have that short-term cash crunch.
Right, and wrapped around your existing debt portfolio a little bit there to give you the relief up front.
Right, right.
Yeah, try to get the payments level.
Yeah.
Craig's hand is up.
Ryan, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about timing.
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
what's-
see if there were any questions on the numbers
I think-
before moving forward.
Craig, you have a question?
Real quick question, were you rolling those old ones into the new one too, or just thinking about this?
Just
No.
paying.
They can't be changed.
In addition, we have a schedule in front of you. This is just a preliminary schedule. It's based on receiving funds at the end of April so that you could move forward with the project as soon as really school's over and the summer kicks off. You guys get ready to move. So what we would be back is, we'd be back here on March 12th for the school board meeting for you to approve that bond resolution. Before that, we'll be working on the preliminary official statement, which is the offering document. We'll go out to the market. Then also have to have a rating call. We get that back, we print that document to the market for them to look at. And then at the same time, we'd be looking to price these bonds on April 7th. So at that point, once we price, those bonds are then locked in. You give us the final approval, it's set, and then we would be looking to close on April 23rd.
And that's really, given the rating process and the documentation process and getting stuff to the state, that's really as quickly as we could move and get to closing and have funds available. If the district's not ready to move that quickly, we could slow that up, but we wanted to show you this is as fast as we could get it done and get into the market and get closed. And that was one of the reasons to start the parameters maximum resolution, because then we can start that process with the state, which does take 30 days on its own. And realize I mentioned the decision on that. We have some time for the final number. If we're unsure, we can certainly use the higher amount to make sure that we can be any under that. And that's a decision we do have to make and ask for really in the next couple of days. So we need to get that ad to the paper the first week in March so that we can take action on the 12th.
Has everyone having discussion or comments on which number? And I guess my thought is we go with a higher number because you can always come down from there.
Right, I mean, if we had to make a decision right now, we'd go with 5 because we can take less.
And then it's also the 15 or the 20. We can't really shorten it up because it would make the debt service increase too much, but we have some flexibility of moving numbers after we do the parameters resolutions.
We could increase the parameters even higher.
Right.
But
And the longer term would keep the debt service lower each year.
And we can prepay it.
And we can prepay it if you want. By your
That
call.
would be the same on a 15 or a 20-year maturity.
So my thought would be take the 20 because then we can always prepay it and restructure it later. It gives us that flexibility if we need it.
And the lower the cost, the less pressure to raise taxes.
Right, right.
And you can see where the market is, there's
The
very
curve is
little
so
difference
flat.
between
Right, there's nothing.
15-year and 20-year rate. So it's hard to argue for not giving yourself the least amount of debt service. You could always decide to accelerate that if you wanted
Right.
to. But at least
0.16% for 5 years of flexibility, that's pretty low. Okay.
The dollar amount that you quoted earlier about if it was either to be 4 million or 15 or 4, 5, 15 or 5 or 20, you gave a number in excess of $250,000, went all over, but.
Yeah.
So that doesn't kick in, those numbers are just averages? If the stuff doesn't roll in until after the other debt is cleared?
the first year was 94,000. For the 5 years, the 5 million in 20 years, you'd be looking at about 94,000 the first year, 128 the second year, and then it's 350 for the last 18 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just kind of, you have the interest in the beginning, principal will start after.
So the second to the last page in that shows
Page
each of
4.
those structures, and what they've also shown is what the current debt service is, and then how that changes with the addition of this, new proposal.
So if that's the approach, 5 million for 20 years, we can get the numbers finished. I'll recirculate the resolution first week in March, we'll be back on the 12th. The resolution won't really look any different other than we'll fill in the blanks, which is just the par amount. We can go through that, we'll have some other documents to sign to send out to the state, and we can get it going, stay on the schedule.
Great.
You don't have to vote on the recommendation?
We have to vote on the
On the 12th.
resolution.
On the
So we still have a couple of weeks to decide formally whether or not we will proceed.
Okay.
So the resolution still has to be approved by the board at the
Right.
meeting on the 12th.
Okay, but that you're recommending the higher number, you don't have to take a vote on.
No, because really it's gonna be part of the resolution.
Okay.
And we'll ultimately need to know what the final one is before the price, but the resolution's gonna have that 8 or 9 million as the maximum amount. We can start the ball rolling, but we won't need until the price, the final number.
And the money will come to us if we follow your proposed schedule here by the end of April.
Yep.
So we use the funds to.
You'll have,
Yep.
the full amount available as the closing date. And we'll talk to the administration about establishing a project fund, so that percent interest earnings until you spend that.
I mean, we certainly want to be able to start tackling the roofs in the summertime.
Right.
And the kids get
Yeah,
out.
our plan would be to do the intermediate center first. That's our current plan, assuming we're, all aligned to
Football field.
Artificial stuff.
No football field.
Any other questions?
Will your subcommittee building grounds deal with this anymore before the next official meeting of the board?
You'll have to take a look at the calendar. We do not currently have one set.
Okay.
So I will take a look at the calendar, and if we can, get something set to discuss any other details associated with that dollar amount. There's a discussion about really what, from that, beyond that 3 million, what would be considered as part of that. John and I are working on a 5 to 10 year plan right now, looking at really just asset life and what else might be out there. So I will let you know if we're able to get it, scheduled before the 12th.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a couple
See you
weeks.
in a
Okay,
couple
Thank you.
all right.
That sounds great. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a comment.
Yes.
I think it's a good reminder for like the 5 people that are watching this from home and
Right.
anybody else who might hear about the meeting and the events of the meeting out down the road that there's a whole lot of, well, no, let me take that back. There's a handful of people out there who just kind of think that they know things, they take information or they take a screenshot and they assign their own information to it, and then they get married to those like really ignorant and uninformed ideas. So anybody who actually has questions about what's going on with the board or the school, they can reach us by phone, by email, they can come to a meeting. There's lots of ways to get actual information aside from the rumors you hear online.
My extension is 1,000.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.